We hope you do. We will be able to share it. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat so that we can get to those at the end, but everybody is going to introduce themselves and I am starting. My name is Sarah Heath. I am the Director of Social Services here in Wilton. We do many different things in my department, but what we're highlighting today is mental health. As I'm sure all of you have heard about, many people struggling, whether it's you're struggling or you know somebody that is struggling, we want you to reach out. We want you to call or email me, my department. Any of us can help you. We want to help you make that appropriate match for counseling or therapy or whatever mental health resource you may need. And we can take the time to do that. We care about you. We care about your mental health. And we want to make sure that based on your insurance, based on your ability to pay, that you have a great match. And if you're unable to pay, we are able to help you, which I'm very happy to be able to say that. So on that note, I'm going to pass it on to Trinity. Trinity, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm Trinity. I'm the Youth Services Coordinator for the town. So like Sarah mentioned, if anyone in town that you know of is a youth or is in a family that needs mental health services, crisis services, anything that you may need help with, feel free to reach out and I can, again, help with referrals based on insurance and help with referrals to local organizations or etc., just based on what you need. And that includes local clergy, anything that may help a given situation. So yeah, I'll pass it off to Captain Cipolla to introduce himself.
How you doing? My name's Rob Cipolla. I'm the operations captain with the Wilton Police Department. One of my roles is the coordinator of our department's crisis intervention team. As a police department, responding to calls for service for people that are in crisis is a frequent call that we respond to, mainly when it has reached an acute phase and immediate response is needed. Often it's the police that are called. So what is our crisis intervention team? Which started as a group of officers that we would send to CIT training, which is typically 5-day training, 40 hours of training to deal with people in crisis. Really, the department has had a focused effort on getting our entire patrol division trained up in that realm. So it's not just a handful of officers that have to train. At this point, 83% of our patrol division has attended the 5-day, 40-hour crisis intervention training. And what is its goal? Its goal is to facilitate safe resolutions for persons in crisis. That's the person in crisis, that's the officers responding, as well as any community members. And while we respond in that, usually that acute phase of someone in crisis, another element and layer of that is being able to refer people to other resources that are available for follow-up beyond our initial response. So with that, I'll pass it off to Ellen from Kids in Crisis.
Thanks, Rob. So I'm Ellen Brzezowski. I work for Kids in Crisis, which is based in Greenwich, but we serve really all of Fairfield County and beyond in Connecticut. And so I'll just briefly tell you about some of the resources that we have. I help supervise the Teen Talk program, and those are master's level mental health counselors that are in area high schools and middle schools and one Boys and Girls Club in Greenwich. But we have a part-time Teen Talk counselor in Wilton High School who's available for students who are having any kind of issue, from stress to academic pressure to, just communication, maybe issues with family, parents, whatever kind of issue comes up, they can go, students are free to go to that Teen Talk counselor. It's a free service, and we just help support the other mental health staff in the building. So although we're not employed by the school, we really work closely with the school, but also have that other level of confidentiality so that if students and parents feel comfortable and don't want anything in the school record, things like that, they can come to the Teen Talk counselor. So that is one piece of the services that Kids in Crisis offers, but the Teen Talk counselor is only there for a certain period of time. So after hours, on weekends, we have a 24/7 helpline, which I know Margaret will give the number to in a few minutes, but that is for parents, for students, youth, families. Anybody can access that helpline if they're having any kind of, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a crisis, but even if they just want to talk through an issue or say, listen, my child is experiencing this. Is that typical for an adolescent or a middle school, or is that something I might need some more help with? And then it could range to, a parent or a child calling and saying, I can't stay in my house anymore. There's too much tension, or, mom or dad is having a problem, or my parents or the parent calls and say, I have to go into the hospital and I have no one else to take care of my child. So we also have respite services in our shelter in Greenwich, and that's for children 0 to 18. And it's a short-term stay. It's usually around 2 weeks. And the goal is always to reunite the child with the family and provide,
and the new Edgewater.
maybe if you could just mute your microphone because we're getting some feedback from somebody. Thank you. So if the child has some, the child and the family work together with our mental health staff at the shelter to do some family therapy, to maybe work out whatever the issues might be at home, that they might not be able to stay at home, or just need that respite because the parents aren't able to take care of them for a while. So that service, that 24-hour helpline, is really where it all starts. And especially during the summers or on weekends, again, when Teen Talk isn't available, we give out that number to the students, even to the support staff in the schools, to try to make that connection. And they always then connect back to the Teen Talk counselor. So there's sort of a seamless service that happens through that. So we're very happy to be here today and to let people know about our services, and please utilize our hotline and the Teen Talk counselor in Wilton High School. That's what we're there for, especially during this very challenging time that we're all living through, and mental health needs are really on the rise. So we hope that we can be of help. And so I will pass it on to Margaret.
Thanks, Ellen. Hi, everybody. I'm Margaret Watt. I'm the Director of Prevention at Positive Directions, the Center for Prevention and Counseling. We're a nonprofit behavioral health treatment and prevention center located in Westport, working in Mid-Fairfield. And I'm so glad that we have this opportunity to talk to you guys all today. And I want to thank Trinity and Sarah for really raising this topic. We're going to keep it short and sweet, but what we're really trying to do here is demystify the fact that everyone's struggling with their mental health. That's a pretty common thing even before COVID, but it's worse now. And so if anyone has a question out there around, like, is it time to seek help? I think the fact that that question came to mind means, well, yes, it is. And help is available. And there are so many resources out there. So there are some really lengthy guides from the Hub, which is represented here today. And I'll highlight where you find that information. But we don't want to go through every single option out there, because the simple thing to do is to start with the gatekeepers. And that's why you're already hearing here today. You've got the town social services is a gatekeeper, youth services, kids in crisis in the schools, the police department. You have folks that you can just go to, and they will help you figure out, how acute is this? What level of care do I need? Where should I go? There are ways to get help. And some of those ways are right here on the screen. I want to highlight that Erin's here from Newport Academy, Danielle is here from the Hub, other folks. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And before anyone asks, yes, you will get a copy of the slideshow afterwards. And can you guys see my screen? Okay, I just have to move your faces out of the way so I can. Oh, I'm in the wrong one. Shoot, hang on. Sorry, gotta try again. Here we go. Okay, you're seeing my slideshow, right? Thanks. Okay, so mental health, where and how, when and how to get help. And this is in Wilton, but a lot of this applies really anywhere. First thing to know is the struggle is real. So typically we have 18 to 20% of the general US population, including kids, experiences a mental illness in any given year. So if you think about your typical family, your nuclear family, the people that you work closely with, you know, it's probably one of them in each case, right? Like if you have a family of 4, very likely one of you guys. Most common mental illnesses are number 1, anxiety disorders, which is where stress takes the wrong turn and goes too far. Number 2 is depression. And right off the bat, I want to highlight how closely these things can be related to substance use disorders, because often drinking or using other drugs can be a negative attempt to cope. So this is your norm, right? We all experience being overwhelmed with everything, and sometimes it just goes too far. But now let's talk about what's happened since COVID. And we have seen a doubling of the mental illness rates. This is from a Kaiser Family Foundation study that was published back in February, and 41% of adults reported anxiety or depression, which was literally twice the normal range. 13% said they had either begun using substances for the first time or increased their use, and 11% reported contemplating suicide in the month prior to the study, and that also was a doubling of the typical rate. So I also want to highlight, as you're thinking about the people you live with, the people you work with, your own self, the highest risk groups were young adults, and that means 18 to 25-year-old, that kind of college age population, with more than half experiencing symptoms of a mental illness and a quarter reporting they were using substances as a coping skill. And then people who are really clearly adversely affected by COVID, like essential workers and people who lost their jobs or had an impact financially, also had higher rates than those bullets of 41%, 13%, 11%. So bottom line here is this is really very prevalent right now more than ever. So again, check in on yourself, check in on your family members. If you need help, just ask. If someone else needs help, you might need to kind of convince them, start that conversation. Okay. So how do you know when it's time to get help? So my menu bar is blocking the top of my screen, but can you see the top of the screen where it says when to get help? Okay, thank you. I like this graphic because it kind of summarizes the fact that, there are mood changes and there are behavior changes. And people may say something, they may not say something, but it doesn't take a lot to notice that someone is now either sleeping all the time or they're not sleeping. They're eating all the time or they're not eating, right? They seem sad or they seem irritable. They're no longer interested in what they're normally interested in. There are many different ways that mental health affects us, and a lot of it is somatic. It's literally in the body, so maybe you have all these stomach aches. But I think a general rule of thumb is if your symptoms have lasted for more than 2 weeks and they are affecting your daily functioning, where you're like, I just can't at work or whatever it is, then it's time to seek help. So ways to seek help. First, I want to just make sure everyone knows that, if it seems like it's a crisis, you're going to know it's a crisis, right? Like it feels like very urgent. So we have so many hotlines out there that are available for free 24/7. They're usually multilingual. Some of them, the top list here is our Connecticut lines. The bottom list are national lines. And you can always call and talk to a crisis counselor who specializes in things like sexual assault or domestic violence or, substance use, detoxification, et cetera. There are many hotlines. This is just a list of the critical ones that everyone should be aware of, and you will have this list. I want to highlight down here at the bottom, the crisis text line and the suicide lifeline. I recommend that you and everyone in your family have these in your phone, because when you're actually like, I've got to talk to someone urgently, that's not the time you want to try to remember the name of the crisis text line or their phone number but you want it in your phone. So when it feels super urgent and you need to talk to someone, call one of these numbers. Here's Kids in Crisis right here. Here's the whole Kids in Crisis flyer. This is actually a different number. They both work. And you already heard Captain Cipolla talking. You can, if it feels like someone needs to come to my house and help right this minute, call the police department, ask for a CIT officer. But the reality is most of the time that is not the situation, right? I want to lead with that. Most of the time that doesn't happen, but I want you all to know those things are there. So maybe you just realize it's time to get some counseling. So we want to kind of demystify this a little. I mentioned gatekeepers before. Your town social services, that's a gatekeeper. Call Sarah and Trinity, let them help you get started, or Lauren, I see, is here too. If you work for a large employer, they probably have an EAP program that's free. You start with them. Your kids need to know, if your kids are in the Wilton High School, they need to know about the Kids in Crisis Teen Talk Counselor. If your kids are on a college campus, they need to know where their counseling center is and what the hotline number is. But everyone should know that there are counselors on school campuses, and then there are these regional resources from the Hub. Daniela Arias is here today from the Hub. The Hub is the Regional Behavioral Health Action Organization serving Greenwich through Stratford. And so they have resource guides that focus on, now let's see if this is going to work. Yep. I clicked on the link. You go to this page, the treatment page has resource guides for different areas of the town, of the region. And, they are 7 to 10 pages long. Let me go back to my slideshow because I want to not get derailed from the slides, because I can walk you through that guide afterwards. So, sorry, this is the downside of being online, right? Like navigating all the menus. So you've got these gatekeeper ways to reach help, right? And the difference between sort of the Hub's guide is the Hub's going to tell you about all the nonprofit treatment agencies. And it's going to list, this one provides detox, this one provides mental health and substance use, it provides outpatient, it provides IOP, which is intensive outpatient. So if you really want to go and just look at options, you can find them all right there. If you want to go the private provider route, I just want to talk to an individual therapist in my town that hopefully accepts my insurance. You can always visit Psychology Today and search by keywords and search by area and search by insurance. But again, you can just start with your gatekeepers. At the bottom of the screen here, I thought it would be useful to talk about some of the things that people always wonder. When people are new to their mental health journey, they seem to feel that they have to call a psychiatrist. So psychiatrists are great. They are fewer and farther between than we would all like. They are very hard to get appointments with. It's very, very expensive to get an initial evaluation with them. One thing that psychiatrists can do is prescribe medication and monitor medications, but you really don't have to start there. You can start with a social worker, a licensed clinical social worker, licensed marriage and family therapist, licensed professional counselor, licensed alcohol and drug counselor. These are all different specialists or certifications that have the training you need to help you get started on your journey. And you can look for those people through the different options we've discussed. So now what's going to happen? You're trying to get help for yourself or someone in your family. You should know that whatever lists you look at, whether it's Psychology Today or the Hub or social services sends you somewhere, you may not get an appointment. Like you're unlikely to get an appointment the same day unless it really sounds like it's hugely urgent. And then providers try to keep some availability. Most likely there's going to be a quick phone call. Here at Positive Directions, you would be talking to Erin at our front desk. She'll ask you a few questions. What are you calling about? She will ask you what type of insurance you have. As Sarah mentioned before, insurance should not have to be a barrier. What it is it may funnel you to one provider or another because providers may accept Medicare, they may accept Husky Medicaid, they may work with Anthem, they may work with Aetna. Generally, you can also do sliding fee scales. self-pay options. There are various ways to pay, but it may just limit who can see you at a specific time. So if you call an agency like Positive Directions, here we have different providers who are on a different insurance panel. So, you know, we might be able to see Ellen today or next week, and we might be able to see Trinity, you know, a couple days later. So it's just worth calling around, and people cancel appointments, openings come up. If you call and you feel like you're getting nowhere, I would always say, call a few more places, because we used to do like one point in time evaluations where we'd call all the treatment providers once every summer and say, how long is your wait list right now? Or when's the next available appointment? And you'd have someone who'd say, we don't have any appointment openings for 5 weeks. And some other people would say 2 weeks. And then someone would say 3 days. And it shifts all the time. So I just want to encourage people, if you think you're getting nowhere, just keep calling. Let's see. So what should you expect when you get to a first appointment? You're probably not lying on a couch talking about your mother, as people sort of think, you know, they're going to say, tell me about your childhood. There is going to be some kind of assessment to figure out if you're in any kind of urgent situation. There's going to be some paperwork, and they're going to ask you about like what brought you in. What are your current symptoms? Do you have any history of any of this? They're going to start a process that is going to take a couple of sessions. You shouldn't necessarily expect that in one session you feel better instantly, because they have to get to know you. But generally within a couple of sessions, you should be able to start feeling that you're getting something out of the process, that you're learning some new ways to manage your thoughts or your feelings or your behaviors, learning some coping skills. Maybe you're practicing some stress reduction techniques. And I think it's really important for people to know that if you are seeing a therapist for a bit and it doesn't feel like it's going anywhere for you, it just might not be a good fit with the therapist. And any good therapist wants you to be feeling better. So it's always okay to say, I think I want to try to work with someone else. Okay, because a good fit is important. I'm going to skip this because it's a 2-minute video from turningpointct.org on what to expect at your first session. And now what I want to do is mention that in addition to the clinical treatments that we're talking about here with therapy, there's peer support. And that shouldn't really even be an option. That should be like something that you consider not just as like, oh, that's a thing that exists, but that's a thing that's really valuable. So if you're struggling with something in your life, there are free peer support groups out there. And what I mean by peer support is, you know, for example, when it comes to a mental illness in the family, NAMI, which is the National Alliance for Mental Illness, has support groups and also trainings throughout the region and state. And if you went to one of those as, say, a family member, say you're a parent of a young adult with, bipolar disorder, you will meet other people who have the same thing happening in their family, and maybe they're a little farther through the journey, and they are going to get what you're going through in a way that nobody else does, not your therapist and not your family, because they've lived it. And also, you're going to be able to kind of problem solve together and offer resources and advice and information and go, try this. This person's amazing. Have you thought about that? And it's going to go beyond what you would talk about just in a clinical session, because it's going to be about other aspects of your life. It's going to go beyond what you talk about with your family or friends. So I really encourage people to check out the peer support options that might be right for you. And again, the Hub CT on the recovery page has an entire downloadable list of support groups in the region. And I'm going to just show that quickly, because what I want you to know is, so you can see it's a 6-page document that you can print. It's organized by type of issue and, autism, bereavement, brain injury. So there are many, many types: eating disorders, gambling, LGBTQIA, mental health. So you can kind of go all kinds of substance use support groups. And there are support groups for the person who is living through something. And then there are separate support groups for their family or friends who are also living their own impact by being so tightly connected to someone who's struggling with addiction or mental illness. So I would encourage you to refer to those guides. And another type of support that is not a support group is one-on-one peer support. And that's where I want to mention, I guess what I should mention first here is on my first bullet here where I was talking about support groups. So I showed you the hub resource guide, and I just wanted to mention, I said NAMI, the CARES group is started out of Trumbull. It's locally based. Those are support groups for families dealing with addiction in the family. rockingrecovery.org is based in Norwalk. It is completely run by people with lived experience with mental illness, providing late night support groups at, when you can't get to sleep, providing all kinds of resources. CCAR is the Connecticut Center for Addiction Recovery. Triangle Community Center is not specifically behavioral health. That's the county's LGBTQ center. And many people in the LGBTQ community do experience mental illness and substance use at higher rates than the straight population, really due to the sort of stigma of society. So it's really important for people to know about TCC. So now moving on to one-on-one peer supports. I just want everyone to know that there are people in the state of Connecticut who are trained either as an RSS, that's a recovery support specialist, which is on the mental health side, or recovery coach, which is on the substance use side. They are people who have already lived through those issues, and they are on the other side of their journey. They're in recovery, and they are trained to help you, to sort of help you on your own journey. There are RSSs who run a statewide warm line from 12 to 9 p.m. every single day. They are themselves young adults, and they are there to talk to young adults who are struggling. I already mentioned young adults are one of the highest risk populations. So that's a really important phone number to know, especially if you have college-age kids. TurningPointCT.org is a statewide project that's actually housed here with us at Positive Directions. It is by and for teens and young adults. It's all about providing each other with support and resources around mental wellness, substance use, et cetera. And so that's online resources on the website, turningpointct.org. And Ali Kernan, who I know some of you guys know, is one of the staff members, and she is trained as both a recovery support specialist and a recovery coach. And she's now available a few hours a week to provide one-on-one peer support to teenagers and young adults in their 20s. So you can see her cell phone here, or you can email her at akernan@positivedirections.org. Another great free resource. She's pretty amazing. She's really good at connecting with people, and she's been through everything. So if you have young adults or teens that you're working with or in your own family that could use that support, I don't think they will regret reaching out to Ali. And this is turningpointct.org that I mentioned. And then just as a sort of summary of this information, we've made this flyer to show you just like kind of the gatekeeper starting places in Wilton. So Wilton Department of Human Services, Police Department, Domestic Violence Crisis Center. Here you can see the different, some of the starter resources and positive youth supports and options for older adults as well. It's not a comprehensive list of everything. It's a starter list for Wilton, okay? And finally, I just want to mention that what we've been talking about here today is, mental health issues are prevalent. They're affecting all of us. Know what the signs and symptoms are to look for, and know how to get started, and don't be scared to get started, right? It's a pretty easy process. You make a call, someone helps you connect to the right service, and let them take you down that road, right? And get the peer support to accompany you. And generally you can start feeling better pretty quickly. But the other thing you can do is manage your own, self-care, practice wellness. This wheel over here is called the 8 Dimensions of Wellness. It's a useful tool for kind of going, which areas of my life are kind of going well and which ones aren't, and how can I address those or make up for it on the other aspects of the wheel. And I just want to mention here that this list of kind of green and blue options, these are all things that research shows really support your mental wellness. So exercise, there are exercise studies, or there are mental health studies that show that exercise can be literally as effective, if not more effective, than an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety in many, many cases. Always worth doing. Hard to get going if you're, especially if you're already depressed and not exercising. So find a friend to do it with you. Mindfulness and meditation make positive changes in the brain. Related to meditation is, anything that to do with your breathing, yoga practices. Ellen's a yoga instructor. She can talk about that. All these different areas are really, really important. And hobbies and pets are all, because there's so many ways you can take care of yourself. And I think sometimes we all need to just look at our life and where are we out of balance and take that giant step back and go, I have to put on my own oxygen mask first. So I know I talked a lot really fast.
Call for service.